Do you think you can be interested in true crime and consume it in a so-called ethical, victim-focused way?
I think it's who you choose to watch.
Mm.
So one of the reasons I started YouTube was because I'd been in loads of documentaries, and I'd had a few family members who I was very lucky to stay in contact with say they got certain things wrong. And I used to have a trust base when I was going into a documentary. I'd get the research, I'd read it, and I'd
Mm.
invest it, and I'd a comment. And it was horrifying to me. So I went back and I redid all the cases that I had been involved in with often the families who'd been involved with them.
Hmm.
And it was so telling to me that sometimes people are more concerned with views than they are with actually legacy. So I think that it depends on what you're watching and how much work has gone into really consistently bringing the facts forward,
Yeah.
and also how much the families are involved, because families want to tell their stories. And I think that when people are watching shows around that area, and particularly most documentaries have families in, it's because they've got this desire to express the meaning of the human being that they lost. I think that the reason that it's so popular is because you can't go on a journey quite as immense and intense as you can when there's been a crime, because you
Mm.
get to feel it. You get to feel angry and rageful and devastated and emotionally devastated, and all those things play in to the experience of being a viewer. You're not watching it going, well, this is great fun. You're watching it
Yeah.
going, this is agony.
Yeah.
So the reason that I struggle when people, and you get it all the time, like where people accuse true crime fans of being voyeurs and they're not, we've done research, we know they're not at all, they're quite the contrary. And you get this idea that only a certain person should tell a story. And I'm really against that, because the reality is that people reach different audiences in different moments. So my viewers on YouTube, they're deep dive, they're very fact orientated, they know a
Hmm.
huge amount about the crimes, and they trust the fact that when I'm telling them those extra facts and facets of the crime, they believe that I've done the research, and I have. It's been done very diligently. But that should not make me somebody who deserves the channel more than a kid at 16 on TikTok or making a video on YouTube for 15 minutes about a crime we've just heard about, because the audience it reaches will be something that mirrors the relational experience age wise and
Mm.
with the kind of audience that they connect with. And it still makes people care.
Yeah.
So ethics are always a weird area, because I think we can usually deconstruct the ethics of everything. Is it
Yeah.
ethical to test drugs on a population? Probably not. But is it going to be helpful in the long road? Hopefully. So all the way, I have quite my temperament is one that always sees both sides of it, and I've been really lucky. The only time I've ever received criticism on YouTube is by murderers' family members who
Yes.
like to get in contact and tell me how wrong I am about the person, which I understand fully. But pretty much everything I do on a victim, I always have family members in touch. And I've worked with several families now on
Hmm.
YouTube documentaries that I've done where they've given me all the information. I'm working on another two at the moment. So I think that it's a mismatch for people to think true crime's a terrible area that's desensitizing, because that's not evident. It doesn't desensitize us. It's quite the contrary.
Good morning. I'm back. Since I am trying to get myself on a schedule and into a routine, I thought it would make sense to cover the queen of crime and consistency. This is what happens when I come back with a creator review of Emma Kenny. So, Emma Louise Taylor Kenny is kind of awesome. If you've never seen her, she's a bit like a British Stephanie Harlow. Very strong, opinionated, very sharp, and snarky. And like Stephanie, as a mom of three, she is particularly sensitive to and protective of cases involving children. While Stephanie's rants are these occasional gems, you get something from Emma almost every video. It may be a full-blown rant, or it may be an imagined conversation, but it's worth watching.
We all know
how it's going to go. It's going to be like, I didn't really have any involvement, but you just told us that you helped to dispose of Sarah's body. I know, I did, but that's not really any involvement. My involvement was just a fantasy. I was just imagining that this was the bit of a game. And at the end of the day, that McCattersney was never actually going to go ahead and do it. I'm pretty sure that you had walkie-talkies and were communicating with each other after planning this and prepping it for a very long time. I think that you are implicated on numerous levels. I do see where you're going with that, and I think that logically, on a logic, makes sense. But I'm saying on an illogical, desperate to get away with murder type thing, I'm just going to go down the road of innocent. Didn't know it was going to happen, sorry, confessing everything, but noticeably putting myself to the side of the crime as opposed to in the centre of the crime. It's not going to work. It's not, is it? Going to have to do better. That's the classic situation, isn't it? Mitigates his involvement in the joint enterprise.
I actually do see a lot of similarities between the two. Is it just me? Because she's coming from a psychology background, she does have a really helpful perspective when looking at cases. And she's very empathetic, but she also holds nothing back. Emma is a fierce advocate for children, but she also speaks about mental illness with a unique perspective, either because of her education and training and years of experience, or the very personal experience that she frequently speaks openly of her father's suicide. When I first came across one of Emma's videos, I thought she was very professional and sleek and confident, very comfortable on screen. And from what I've gathered, she was actually a very successful TV presenter. She was a media commentator. She had a role as, I don't know, a psychology segment on a morning show. I guess there was some controversy during COVID. She, okay, this is such a touchy area. My understanding is that she opposed mandatory vaccinations, though she's not actually anti-vax, and she was very opposed to lockdowns. Personally, I understand why the lockdowns were necessary. You can look at the statistics of the spread of the disease in places that were open versus places that were closed. The faster people shut down, the better it was regarding COVID. But it was also locking people in unsafe situations in with their abusers. It was trapping people, blocking resources, preventing social workers from doing home visits. Domestic violence victims were forced to live without break with their abusers, and the stress was turned up by just the culture of fear and controversy and disagreements and not knowing what was coming. It was a very stressful time, and when you already have a dangerous circumstance, that's terrifying. I remember I read some statistic fairly early on in lockdown about how great it was that there were much fewer cases of child abuse. And immediately it hit me that they're just not being reported. You know, their kids aren't going to school. There are no teachers to step in for them. There's no one seeing a child to know what's happening. And there's nowhere for kids to turn if they are in that situation. So I understand her feelings on the lockdown. But I digress. So she left her morning show and is now on YouTube. She has about 210,000 followers right now. And she's really good. Thorough, deep research and an insane amount of consistency. She doesn't miss a post. Twice a week, all of them are very well put together and nearly 2 hours. I have no idea how she has the time for it. And she recently had a new baby while touring and posting twice a week without missing a single day. I have no idea how she accomplished that. And I have no idea how she hid her pregnancy. I'm very happy for her though. So Emma, if you see this, congratulations and welcome to the world, Etta Blue. Okay, for the rapier, she is just across the board, 100%. You know, it's respect, it's audiovisual, it is presence and personality, it is intent, it is empathy, it is research. And she is just at the best level one can be at all of them. Again, like Stephanie Harlow, she is a strong, intelligent woman. And I know some people read that as abrasive, which I think is bullshit and unfair. But, you know, her personality, every personality, you're going to click or you're not. All I can do is tell you she does thorough research, she cares, and she's worth checking out. She's got 25 years of experience in therapy, and she has a master's from University of Manchester, I believe. She is bang to rights, worth checking out if you haven't yet. So that is my review on Emma Kenny. Stay safe, listen to your instincts, and if you're ever in a scary situation, do not comply. All right, I'll be back soon. Bye. Okay, I'm going to throw in one more little clip of Emma just because it's worth watching. I kid you not.
But you can see, can't you? Abject denial and also superiority. I'll just say that I don't have Munchausen's by proxy. I'll just say that I didn't actually knowingly harm my child. And these people will believe me. After all, they can go and speak to the nice people who helped me. And they'll absolutely state that I'm a good person. Oh, cool. You just wander out then. That's all we needed to know. We just needed to check out whether you were actually a nice person. Now you've said that you're a really nice person, we're going to let you go. Off you go. Go on, go on. Stop. Yeah, the door's locked. By the way, the stocks are out there. There's a group of people with a very high level amount of tomatoes, some of which are really, really hard because we've let them dry. And they're going to throw them at you for an hour and a half before we transport you to a den of lions. Again, just gone into my little fantasy zone there. That would be quite a nice moment to actually watch. Not suggesting that we should have somebody ripped apart by lions for this kind of thing, but I'm just saying, if the person happened to fall into a cage of lions and it happened, it couldn't happen to a nicer person as like he doesn't care. In fact, during this period, he's observed to smile frequently. You know when an adult says to you when you're a kid, you want to be careful, I'm going to wipe that smile off your face. Is there not some kind of judicial process where that would be considered appropriate? I don't know. Like some kind of cattle prod or taser every time. Like some kind of conditioning reality psychologically where you can just get the smile wiped off the face. Maybe just a stapler. Maybe just, because obviously other things can be relatively expensive, can't they? Just like a really big staple. The ones you see in like horror movies where somebody's chasing you with a staple gun. You know, those really big ones. And just pull the mouth down at each side and just staple accordingly. That would be a way of preventing them smiling, wouldn't it? Is that going too far? Is that maybe going a little bit too far? Why in my head does it seem like a completely rational suggestion? It actually feels like a very appropriate course of action. Anyway, again, I digress. Apologies. Just going to throw it out there, David. It seems that the women that you have sex with keep coming up dead. So we're not believing that you're potentially somebody who just drops them off or not. Is there somebody stalking you? Going, well, I'll just go over the clients that David goes for and then I'll murder them afterwards so that David looks like he's in the frame. Actually, that might be a defence I'll use. That's the kind of stuff that goes through these kind of killers' minds, isn't it? Honestly. Also, the bites, you know, all over her body. Some of them so severe that she's had her skin torn off. Apparently, they were done by her young cousin. I mean, Teghan's 4. Is her younger cousin Jaws? No. Her young cousin isn't, is it? Because a young cousin, firstly, would have a tiny mouth, and secondly, isn't a Rottweiler. I think this guy, who has refused to take medication before, who has decapitated an innocent man on a coach, who threw himself head first out of said coach and cannibalised the victim thinking he was an alien. I'm throwing it out there that you, if you put no restrictions on him whatsoever, will not be aware as to whether he's taking his medication that could mean he spirals into a scenario where we see a repeat of this. Yeah, but we just think is a really low risk. I don't know whether you need to rewind my conversation and then replay it 6,000 times until it sinks in, but why is this low risk? Why? Low risk when controlled. Low risk when supervised, low risk when consistently monitored, and when everyone's aware of where this individual is. Low risk. The minute you let him out, he's not necessarily low risk, is he? Just these things are problematic, not just for people who may be in danger should a decline happen. It's dangerous for him. We have to remember that Lee has struggled enormously. He could be a threat to himself. So this is twofold. This is about a community who can be affected, an individual who could find themselves in a similar situation to Tim, and also Lee, who may end up doing something dangerous to himself. But even though they say that this is the reality in the past and that public safety is paramount, apparently they think his reoffending risk is really low. So just to put it out there, guys, that decision means he's 100% free. No agency supervision to ensure he's taking the medication. They just have to trust that he'll go ahead and do it, even though prior to the killing, he'd literally been living with untreated schizophrenia, had denied he was ill, and had refused to take meds. And later he went on to believe that he was on a mission from God to save the human race from aliens. And on top of that, I brutally killed, decapitated, mutilated, and cannibalised an innocent man. All the while not recognising that he was ill. What could possibly go wrong?